To accept something like that, to accept something like, oh yeah, it's time for me to shut down, it's time for me to go into the dark, like, oh, bye-bye, don't know when I'll be seeing you again. To accept that is to come into contact with the part of you that never has been, never will be, and isn't good enough. It's to be worthless. This is where Belial makes his entrance. Belial is the worthless one. If you are new here, let me know that you're new in the comments. Say hello. I am Astrid, and this is a brand new series, video 1 of the series called either Demonic Diaries or Shadow Journals. So, haven't picked a name for this series yet, but hopefully by the time this video goes up, there will be a name. Leave a comment and let me know which one you like better, and if it stays 50-50 like the poll on Instagram is right now, then maybe I'll make one specifically about my shadow journals and sharing those things, and also have a Demonic Diaries playlist as well. So both could be their own series potentially. Why limit ourselves, right? Isn't that what this is all about? Okay, so if you've already voted, thank you very much. Right now, like I said, it's near 50-50, and so yeah. So what is this series? This series is basically a way for me to be able to share my own personal gnosis with my audience, because you guys have been asking a lot for shadow work, and for, you know, information about working with demons or spirits or witchcraft and in general, especially on TikTok. And as much as I love TikTok, I really want to focus a lot of attention on YouTube, and I've been wanting to do that. And so I think that this video right here, this first video in this series, is a really profound and beautiful moment for me because of what I've just gone through. There's tons of information about the demons that I'm going to be talking about in this series, and if you want to know just like the basic stuff about them, you can totally go look it up. Okay, so on to the diary. This one is specifically about working with Belial. And I wrote so many pages of this, which makes me think that I should probably start this in blog form too, because the way I write and the way I speak are completely different. But I do want to share this lesson that I got a couple weeks ago from Belial. So I've been dwelling in this void. It used to make me very, very, very uncomfortable, especially whenever I still believed that we're all supposed to be happy, right? Like, we're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to be carefree and all of these things. It was so uncomfortable. To be able to live like that takes a lot of ignorance, honestly. It takes a lot of avoidance. I felt like I should be happy, I should be successful. But I got to a point where I had to start leaning into the darkness. And this was even before I started on the left-hand path. It was a point where it was impossible to not start looking at what was there. The love and light culture became totally disgusting to me. I was completely bored by life and social media, my business, just everything that ever meant something to me, I became bored and disgusted by. You know, spewing toxic positivity and like watching people do that as well. It became a living shadow work journey. Like, that's all I can explain it as, is I started noticing everything that was shadow. And that's one of the things about doing shadow work and getting really heavily into it, is that your life is going to change forever. You're never going to be the same person after starting shadow work and learning about the shadow and learning how to actually decondition yourself and start raising yourself up to the standard that your soul or your spirit has for you. In looking around me, no matter where I looked, it was so clear to me that my life was just a lie. It was a complete lie. I was left in incredible suffering. And Buddha says that all of life is suffering, right? And it's true. But knowing how to work that suffering, work through that suffering, is total liberation. Knowing how to play the game, knowing, how to get the cheat codes, or, what you're even looking for. What is even the purpose or the mission of the game? That makes it not just tolerable, but it makes it absolutely liberating. So I noticed that acceptance during this time of being in the void space. I noticed that acceptance had become my biggest lesson in my life. It's acceptance of what is, and then taking the next right course of action, meaning like the one that's closest to the direction that you want to move, the one that's going to take you towards the direction that you want to move in. Acceptance. I learned about that in AA in my early 20s, right? Like, acceptance is the answer to all of our problems today, right? And that's one thing I will say about AA, is that it gave me a firm foundation for my spiritual journey. And the reason why acceptance is the biggest lesson is that you can't change something unless you know that it's there. And I'm not talking about just the type of acceptance where you just accept your programming and you accept that you just have to wake up and go to work and pay bills and die. Not that kind of acceptance, but the acceptance of, like, here's a goal that I have, and here I am, right? Like, here's a goal, and I'm like all the way over here and not anywhere close to it. And you can't just trick yourself. This is that toxic positivity that I was talking about, and like that love and light culture is the affirmations and things of like, I am this, I am that. But really, in deep down inside of you, you're either falling apart or you're actually just nowhere near that. And if we continue to lie to ourselves about already being there, then it makes it almost impossible to ever get to a place where you can embrace your dream and hold it in your hand and be like, hell yeah, look at what I did. This is awesome. You have to accept, like, okay, yeah, I'm $30,000 in debt. My parents won't speak to me. I don't love my partner, or I really need somebody to love in my life, or whatever the case may be. You have to accept all of these things in order to be able to get to that place that you're meant to go towards. So acceptance has been huge for me, and especially in this void space, there's another type of acceptance that happens. It's one that says, oh yeah, I have, I've built something for myself, and people are used to me showing up and, teaching them about something and helping them. And right now, all I want to do is just go inside of me and kind of shut the world off for a little bit. And, that's pretty much what I do whenever I feel myself going into one of those void spaces that I'm calling it the void space, because I'm very familiar with this void space, is that the more willing you are to accept that you are there, you'll pop out almost as soon as you are willing to admit that, as soon as you're willing to accept that. And it seems counterproductive, because accepting a place that is less than where you want to be it's almost shameful in our society. Because to accept a situation like that, where if people are depending on you and they're looking to you for answers in some shape, fashion, or form, and then you just kind of disappear, like I tend to do sometimes, that's shameful. To accept something like that, to accept something like, oh yeah, it's time for me to shut down, it's time for me to go into the dark, like, bye-bye, don't know when I'll be seeing you again. To accept that is to come into contact with the part of you that never has been, never will be, and isn't good enough. It's to be worthless. This is where Belial makes his entrance. Belial is the worthless one. Let me tell you, before I started working with Belial consciously, I would journal for hours or days, weeks, months. I would journal my ass off about my feelings of worthlessness, about not feeling good enough, in hopes that something inside of me would click, that it would alchemize, and I'd be like, oh, that's a lie. But it's not. I know that feeling of worthlessness just as well as anybody, if not better. The amount of resentment that I held for this statement, I'm not good enough, or worthiness, the amount of resistance and resentment that I held within my being and still kind of do is astronomical. But a certain point comes in your journey where you realize that some of your biggest flaws, or your character flaws, or the things you hate about yourself become some of your greatest gifts. For me, when that moment came, there was suddenly no more proving to do, but the goal was the same. And it wasn't because I needed that goal in order to prove that I was good enough anymore, but rather it's because it's what's been destined for me since the beginning of time, and that's power. And of course, to know one, you must know the other. That means that I know powerlessness intimately. In those moments of perceived powerlessness is where I'm able to step more fully into my power. It's like that moment whenever you finally realize that, yeah, my hands are in the air. I don't know what to do about this situation or the circumstance. And you feel like giving up. And in you sort of do give up in a certain way. And then a solution comes. And that's always how it is for me around feeling worthless, powerless, whatever the opposite of the way we want to feel is, right? Unhappy, dissatisfied, discontent. That always comes in a moment of giving up. And that giving up is acceptance of what is. And it's not there to weaken you. It's not there to crush you. It's there for a full surrender. And a full surrender really is necessary. It's just kind of a shame because to accept these moments of powerlessness in our culture is to admit defeat. Nobody wants to do that. But in those moments where you do get to a full acceptance, where you do realize that you're experiencing the exact opposite of the thing that you're asking for, the reason why I find so much fulfillment and power inside of powerlessness, and it's just for a split second, it's just a moment in time where I am able to pull it back and fully step into the power that is already mine and always has been, is because I suddenly know what questions to ask in order to get the right answer, to move forward, to move into the next checkpoint in the game of life. And I've always been quick, witty, intelligent, bold, whatever you want to call it. I've always been these things. I've always been really great at shadow work. I've always been really good at presenting questions and pressing people for the answers so that they can find the answers within themselves. I'm not the kind of person that just always tells you the answer, because I want you to find it for yourself. Something inside of you will click differently if you're searching for the answer and then you find it. And if that means that you have a little bit of help with somebody prompting you to ask the right questions, then it makes a really huge difference in your ability to process those things. Now, doing it with yourself, however, is a totally different story. And I will say I have a gift of being able to dig into my own subconscious. Just like before, saying that some of your biggest flaws turn out to be some of your biggest gifts. That's one of mine, is having a relentless inner critic or a saboteur that wants to constantly question things. And that means that it questions the things that are true and the things that aren't true in everybody, including in myself. That has been a blessing in disguise, I guess. But after working, bringing Belial into my work, I noticed that the amount of breakthroughs would be much more profound, much more often. They would come so much more quickly, and it it's just changed everything for me. So during my last experience in this void space where I just have to shut the world off and integrate a new lesson for myself, I asked for Belial's help with something. Actually, it was a couple things, and one of them was my haircut, actually. I know that probably sounds weird, but it wasn't just about a haircut, but this, like, cutting my hair was a result of some of the stuff that I asked about and asked for. He helped me with the things that I asked for, but he did not continue to help me beyond the things that I asked for. It was almost as if all of the spirits that I worked with disappeared, just vanished into thin air. And that's because those moments are precious. Before bed one night, I was doing a meditation saying, thank you for helping me with this, this, and this. It was actually, I think, just 2 things. But thank you for helping me with this and this. And also, I really need help getting back on track. Like right now, I'm just feeling worthless. And like I said before, I always get to this one place right before I have like my big breakthrough. This was one of the biggest breakthroughs that I've had, even after, the many hours that I've spent journaling about worthiness and, being good enough. This was by far the most amazing experience I've ever had while focusing on this issue in particular about, feeling worthless, feeling not good enough. So after a momentary lapse of self-pity and asking Belial to help get me back on track because I was feeling worthless, forgetting that though nothing in my life was moving at all, that I still needed to stop and recognize it as precious. Totally forgot that, right? We always do. These are some of the greatest moments of our lives when we are in our darkest hour. So I just told him, and I'm going to read this to you. Keep in mind that society wants us to do and not be. That's where the shame and the guilt comes in. I've been feeling so worthless. He interjects and he tells me that's the point. What makes you think you're worth anything? What makes you think you should be? You are valuable, but your worth can never be measured. That was it. It was a profound moment for me. I'm feeling worthless. That's the point. What makes you think you're worth anything? What makes you think that you should be? You are absolutely valuable, but your worth cannot be measured. It took me 2 weeks to integrate that. Even though it was a really profound statement, it took me 2 more weeks of sitting in the dark, sitting in that void space, to make sense of why I was there. He was right, of course. It's in these ways that we oversimplify our emotions and we articulate them in a way that is a societal standard. And we can sometimes forget our own values. And we can go off of that. It's because I'm not doing anything. I'm not making content. That means that, I'm not good enough. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to be the last time that I go into this space, this void. It's just a part of my own cycle. And I think everybody kind of goes through it. We just don't honor it as a society. We don't honor that downtime. And it's really important. So we make these judgments on our life and they're wrong, saying that I feel worthless, that was just wrong. It was just a spur of the moment, out of habit type of thing to say because I haven't done anything, right? Like I haven't made new content or anything like that. It was just a spur of the moment thing where it felt like, yeah, I feel worthless. We use these words because they're basic, they're easy, they're plain, they're understandable. People generally know what you're talking about whenever you use the word worthless. Most importantly, it's comfortable. But none of this is meant to be comfortable. Period. If we wanted comfortable, we would have incarnated as a cat. When we really stop to reassess what we're feeling and why we're feeling these things or why we're going through certain things, we always have to remember that there is a purpose behind it. And for me, this purpose, the purpose of going into this darkness was, one, to face this worthiness issue again, which is really dumb because I personally feel like I'm worthy of the fucking world, right? Like, I feel that my value can be measured, like, and I should have the world to show for it. That's besides the point. So one, it was to learn that lesson, and two, it was because also I sometimes get so far off into my work that it can be hard to connect with the people who are coming in, that are new, that are, asking questions, that are, whatever the situation is. They don't have like a meditation practice going on. They don't know how to ground or shield or, do any type of magic workings or anything like that. They don't know how to love themselves. I feel 100% that this time the reason why I had to go through this, the second reason why I had to go through this, is because a lot of the people that do come to me, they don't have a solid foundation. So maybe you don't have a solid foundation, and you start to get to a disconnect where you do feel like, that's too simple, that's too easy, I don't want to put that out. That is just like, everybody knows that, or they can already go research it and they can go find it. But you guys know how I feel about our own perspectives. Like, yeah, there might be 10,000 videos on the same topic that you think is too easy to talk about because there's 10,000 videos, but you don't take into account that there are 10,000 people that want to hear what you think about it. So it's one of those things. And so what ends up happening is when I get too complacent, or whenever I start expecting too much of myself, I usually have to get knocked down a peg or two in order to remember how hard it is to climb out of that dark, cavern, that to crawl out of that place that you just exist in, instead of living life to its fullest and going after the things that you want and living your soul's purpose. It's really easy to forget that, especially if you're putting all of this on display for the world. It can be easy to judge yourself. It can be easy to judge what you're speaking to the world. It can be easy to believe that it's not good enough. And then Belial comes in and says it's not supposed to be. According to the world's standards, you are worthless. Accept that. You'll never be the CEO of some corporation, and you were never meant to be. You'll never be the first woman president, and that's fucking great because you were never meant to be. You never had any interest in that. If there is something in the basic society structure that you want to go after, then go after it. But for me, as a shadow worker, as somebody who really breaks people down and deconstructs their program with them to help them get to a place that they can reveal their true selves and their true will, that was never in the cards for me. So this time specifically, the dark was a total expanse of nothingness. My rhythm was knocked off. My habits died hard. And it made me realize that the people who are coming to me are in this space too. While it always serves some personal purpose, and there is also always a collective one as well. So this is the lesson I wanted to share with you, the lesson of worthiness from the worthless one himself. The lesson is, if you're watching this, you were probably never meant to be of value to society either. We are starting a whole new paradigm. We are starting a whole new awakening in the world. There are tons of people right now pioneering this movement, all the way from the right-hand path to the left-hand path and everything in between. We are connecting on a totally different level than we've ever connected before. And it doesn't get to be about how fucking valuable you are to society anymore. It doesn't get to be about that. And that's awesome. So like I said, after this lesson from Belial, what makes you think that you're worth anything, right? What makes you think that you should be? And also, you need to know you are valuable, but your worth cannot be measured. It will never be measured by material things. I've been there too, There was a point where I was making 5 figures a month in my business, and it was not all it was cracked up to be. I had worked so hard to get to this level, but there was no fulfillment in it. In fact, I actually felt more ashamed than anything, like that I had made this of utmost importance, and it didn't feel like anything. I didn't feel exciting. It didn't feel amusing, like none of that. So anyways, how to sit with this lesson for a couple of weeks. It's been clear to me for months that Belial has acted in my life for a very long time, and possibly from the very beginning and even before I was born. He's been sort of like a protector for me. We've had several intimate encounters. He's kept me from serious legal issues, even though I've been arrested more than a handful of times. I've never had to do any more than 31 days. But most of all, he has acted as a destroyer and a disruptor of anything in my life that has ever come into it that does not serve my personal purpose on this planet and in this incarnation in general. And for a while, I couldn't even conceive of working with anyone else until recently, this weekend, whenever he made it so blatantly obvious and clear to me that the work we've done up to this point has been successful and that it's finally time to start creating from the place of destruction. He made me realize that the work that we've done together has destroyed every obstacle. He's destroyed everything that would tie me to the comfortability of the things that I've known and the way of doing my purpose work in the world. In a way that isn't aligned to my values, that isn't aligned to like that feeling of fulfillment, getting there. I know how to get there, but it's not what I want. And he's helped me to realize this weekend, he helped me realize that we finally beaten down all of those obstacles to where it will never have to be like that again. That yes, I will still be able to do my purpose work, but it will never be the way that it was. And I will never be able to go back to just the way that it was comfortable or easy. We've torn down every perceived limitation to the point where there is nothing to fear about, nothing to fuss about, and shown me that the hardship and the adversity that I've faced in my lifetime has prepared me for this moment. To go fully and boldly into the world, knowing that I am valuably worthless. How's that? Then he opens the door to be greeted by King Paimon. I realized that Belial's purpose in my life has always been to strip away and tear apart all the things that do not align with my spirit or my soul's purpose. He's telling me that it's time to introduce creation energy. And although he can create for me, that's not what he's here for me for. He's here to make sure that I never stay stuck doing something that is anything less than absolutely fucking fulfilling for me. That is anything less than what I've incarnated on this planet to do. He will always help me to shift my spiritual paradigms, my mental paradigms, to be in integrity with who I am as a spirit being. These beings will continue to do extraordinary things in our lives. They have always been here and they always will be here. And if you're watching this video, I'm pretty freaking sure that, either you have spirit communication with them already and they're helping you in some way, or you're curious and you want to know more about it. And I want you to know that it's not all like doom and gloom. It's not all darkness and hate and all the 7 deadly sins. It's not all of that stuff. It's liberation. It's going against the grain. I'm sure working with these beings can be dangerous for some people. That has not been my experience. And I think that there are some of us who are just kind of like born into that current, some of us that are just born into being a part of this side of the tracks, if you will. And so far for me, this communication on these relationships have been easy. It's like a calling from the dark. It's like a calling that, this is the current that you're supposed to be riding, right? Like that you were never meant to fit in and just go along with the expectations of the people around you, that you look around and you think that everybody's lives are so fucking boring and how could they do that? And you resign yourself to a life of misery because it's all you know how to do. And I'm here to tell you that that's not all there is for you. You absolutely have the power and capacity to turn your reality into something that's completely enjoyable, even in the moments where it's not so enjoyable. And I know that that's a paradox, but when you get to a certain place in your life, you realize that there is no other truth than the ultimate paradox of truth. And that's why it says walking paradox on my cover art, because like I do contradict myself sometimes, and it's for a reason, because it's never either or, it's always both and. I'm only here to encourage people towards liberation, and all I can do is share my experiences in hopes that you find that for yourself, that you find the courage to face what's inside of yourself that has been damned and bastardized, your shadow self. And you don't just face your shadows, you greet them with open arms. You're ready to integrate these aspects of self that have been shamed away. And the really cool part is, on top of just general basic shadow work, you can actually face and welcome in the demonized parts of self with other beings that have been demonized as well. And through that experience, you get to leap through these lessons. And you get to always have the answers that you're looking for. You don't wonder when the next step is going to appear or where it's going to lead you to. You have this new level of trust that is going exactly as your true will has designed it to be. Because your human will, like your conscious mind might not be fixated on, your desires and your goals, but your true will always is attuned to that. And even if you do go through, a 3-month blackout period or whatever it is, your true will is still making its way in this world. It is still clearing things up for you. And sometimes even in those dark moments are just moments that you have to rest, because what's about to come up is gonna really require all of that energy. So it's like a hibernation period for you. And these are like little things that we have to remember. It always has been, it always will be, and it already is perfectly acceptable for you to be all of you, nothing less. So that means if you're having a shitty day, let yourself have it. Except I'm having a shitty day right now. Like, this fucking sucks. Okay, cool. Like, what's next? Sometimes that means taking a nap. Sometimes that means going for a jog or punching a punching bag so you get out through your anger. Sometimes that means having a glass of wine. These things are not always perfect. They don't have to be, and no one's asking that of any of us. But what we are asked to do is to honor ourselves, to honor our truths, and to not just ignore that we're feeling a certain way. But to face it, you are having a shit day. You can ask, why am I having a shit day? Is there anything that I could have done better? Is there anything that I could do right now that would actually make me feel in alignment? That's your next right action. Like I said, sometimes that's just taking a nap. So anyways, I think that's it. I think I've rambled on long enough. My battery is blinking now. So I really hope that you enjoy this series. I know I talk a lot about me, but I also know that through talking about my experiences, a lot of other people learn a lot of other lessons, and that's all I can really hope for. So if you enjoyed this, I will continue to make them. Just like this video, subscribe, turn on notifications, all of that good stuff. And if anything in here resonated deeply with you, then just leave it in the comments and let's continue to have a conversation. You can join my Discord server. I'll leave a link to that. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, I think that's kind of it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. If you watched all the way through, you are awesome. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.